Hello there, everybody. So this morning I woke up and took a 80-mile drive down to a tiny town on the Ohio River in West Virginia. Many of you have probably already guessed where that is, but if you haven't, I'm in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. So basically, Point Pleasant's a tiny little town along the Ohio River, and a lot of things have happened here, a lot of crazy things. So today I'm going to try to give you like a quick tour of the town, of some of the famous sighting locations, and maybe touch on each of the paranormal events or happenings that took place here in this area. And there's a lot to unravel. So I'm going to stop yapping, start getting to it, and we'll see what we can do. Now, perhaps the best place for me to start here is back in the 1770s. The area was inhabited, I guess, by the Mingo tribes and the Shawnee tribe, and that didn't fit in with the white settlers' plans as they were expanding westward. So in the 1770s, I believe it was 1774, there was a small skirmish called the Dunmore War, basically over these lands, and it was the English colonists versus the two tribes I mentioned, the Mingo and Shawnee. Basically, the white settlers ended up victorious in that battle. And a few short years later, in 1777, the leader of those tribes, Chief Cornstalk, came here to a fort that was in this area, surrendered himself for a peace treaty, and unfortunately he didn't walk away. They ended up murdering him here at the fort. But before he drew his last breath, he cursed the lands that Point Pleasant now sit on. And many believe that that curse is the reason for many of the strange happenings here today. And a funny anecdotal little story, and I'm going to walk into the shade because it is 90 degrees already. My fiance Sarah and I attempted to come down here last week, and my 5-year-old Kia broke down on the highway, engine completely seized, and basically I have a 2,000-pound paperweight at this point. And the running joke since then is that the Cornstalk curse took my vehicle. Honestly, between you and me, I think it's more terrible craftsmanship by Kia. Never buy a Kia. But it's still a little ironic that we basically passed over Parkersburg, and that is where we broke down, and that's basically where this region that he cursed began. So it's kind of ironic that that's where that took place. My next stop here, I'm not real sure I'm allowed to film in, but I'm going to give it a shot. Of course, I'm talking about the Mothman Museum. I'll show you the storefront here. like I'm being watched. I just left the Mothman Museum, and I had to get myself Mothman root beer. Let's see how it tastes. Well, the novelty's great. That place is pretty cool. I highly recommend it. It was $3.71 to get in. I was in there for about an hour looking around. I'd been in there before, so I'd seen a lot of things. And ironically enough, as I've mentioned on the show 1,000 times ad nauseum, I worked for the company that shot the Mothman film. So I saw a lot of things in there that looked familiar to me. And weirdly enough, I saw my boss and my old boss and several photo albums of the production photos. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, highly recommend going in. Jeff Wamsley is the curator there, and I think they're open daily from like noon to 5 or something. So highly recommend you check it out. I'm gonna move on and hit some other spots up and show you what's going on here. And probably one of the most famous landmarks here in town, the infamous Mothman statue, sculpted and created by Bob Roach. Okay, I couldn't get him on film, but I just had a guy, as I was filming the statue here, had a guy stop me and say, "Hey, I know what the Mothman is." And we're like, "Oh yeah, well, what's that?" He said, "Oh, I got a buddy who used to get real drunk and go up there and scare all the kids necking in the cars." And we continued to talk for a few minutes about it, but he was convinced that that's exactly what the Mothman was. So he said the guy's still living in here in the area, so maybe I'll run into him, or maybe he'll try to scare me. I hope so, but I wish I got him on film, because that was pretty good. I just thought I'd share that. Now, perhaps the most tragic part of all these legends and the supposed curse of Chief Cornstalk is the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967. The parking lot that I'm standing in now was once the road leading up to the Silver Bridge, which of course collapsed on December 15th of 1967. And in that collapse, several people lost their lives, and I don't have that exact number on me, unfortunately, but I will put it below. Many had speculated whether or not the Cornstalk curse actually resulted in the crash, but As it turns out, it was a faulty I-beam, I believe, or something along those lines that that ended up causing the bridge to collapse. But in its place is now this parking lot, and the bridge is no longer there. Another tragic event that took place here in Point Pleasant. Now, as I said previously, there is a lot to unpack here. In addition to the Indrid Cold encounter that Woody Derenberger had and the Mothman encounters in the area, there were multiple UFO sightings that took place throughout the region in Mason County here. In addition to those UFO experiences, the Men in Black were a prominent figure here in town, and author John Keel and newspaper reporter Mary Heyer wrote about their experiences with these beings extensively. And I won't go into a ton of detail. There are plenty of podcasts and TV shows and documentaries that do that, but I just kind of wanted to drive home the point that even in this tiny little town, there was this kind of phenomenon that took place that I don't know, it just, to me, it's amazing that it could go, that they think they could go unnoticed. Let's put it that way. Like, that Men in Black can show up into a tiny town like this and think they could go unnoticed. To be quite honest with you, I feel like dirty eyes staring at me right now doing this weird little thing, talking into my camera. So I don't know. Like I said, I won't go into it heavily, but I did want to at least mention the fact that the Men in Black were a prominent figures for several years here in this location. Well, I am in the McClintic Wildlife Refuge area, formerly known as the TNT or the TNT area. And this is essentially where it all began, at least the Mothman portion of everything. Before I get into the story, I will say that I'm trying to find some of the igloos, but a lot of what I'm reading is saying it's on private property and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not real sure if I'm able to get to them or not. It's pretty overgrown and it is super hot out here today, so I don't know how much tromping through the woods I'm actually going to do, but we'll see what I can find. But in the meantime, let me tell you why I'm here. On November 15th of 1966, four, I guess, teenagers or young adults were out here in this area known as the TNT, which was a local parking spot for teenagers back in the day. And those folks were Linda Scarberry and her husband Roger, and then Steve and Mary Mallett. They were driving a 1957 Chevy. So anyway, they were out here doing what you do, and they saw the Mothman. And this is the first, I guess, real sighting. There was another sighting 3 days prior. Ironically, 13 years to the day that I was born, there was a sighting, I think it was about 30 or 40 miles east of here in Clendon, West Virginia, by a few grave diggers. But that story didn't come out till well after a lot of the Mothman publicity had already exploded. So a lot of people discount that first sighting, but initially this is the first sighting. So they supposedly witnessed the Mothman, and it chased their car doing speeds upwards of 90 to 100 miles an hour all the way back to Point Pleasant, where they notified the sheriff and they came back. Now, there's a few interesting notes here that First of all, they described the being as around 6 to 7 feet tall, built somewhat like a man, but with big wings, like where their shoulders would be, like big wings, and glowing red eyes. They said that the creature was a gray tone, like a gray color. And another interesting thing that I read about, Linda Scarberry reported seeing a dead German Shepherd on the way here. And when they raced back, she said it was gone along the road. And ironically enough, there was a sighting that happened, I'm going to get the date wrong on this, but it was either the next day or later that night, where a gentleman was watching TV and his TV went out on the fritz, and his dog started barking, ran outside, and never came back. And it was a German Shepherd. So that kind of ties in there a little bit. Now, as far as the area here is concerned, it was a munitions storage facility, or a bunch of munitions storage facilities for the war back in World War II. So basically they would keep explosives in these igloo-shaped containers. And from what I understand, there are dozens of them out here in this area that are now overgrown and, from what I understand, quite dangerous to be around, but I have yet to see one, so I can't speak for that. So I'm gonna get back in the car here, drive around a little bit. It's so thick and so wooded that I just don't know if I can find them unless they're close to the road, but I'm gonna give it a shot and try to, man, the bugs are all over me. I'll try to find a couple to film here, but just being in this area is really cool. There's nothing spooky about it. It's just woods, hot, steamy woods with tons of insects and spider webs and creepy crawlies and flies. But just the fact that the history of what went on here, to me, is pretty exciting. It's really cool to be here. So anyway, I'm gonna jump in the car here and move on down the road. Of course, none of this is like extensive information. If you want extensive information, I can give you 2 shows to listen to right now. Go to Astonishing Legends and listen to their, I believe, like 6-part Mothman series. Very informative, lots of information. And another good one would be Not Alone podcast. Sam and Jason do a pretty good job with that as well. So if you're looking for vast information on the subject, I highly recommend checking those out. Or streaming on Amazon right now is Seth Breedlove's Small Town Monsters, The Mothman of Point Pleasant, which is awesome. I highly recommend you check that out as well. So like I said, if you're looking for extensive information, I would check those 3 sources out. And before I let you go here, I'm going to take you out here and show you. A lot of people question whether or not Roger Scarberry could have done 100 miles an hour in a 57 Chevy, which is doable. If you look behind me, there's a long straight stretch. It's probably 2 miles. He definitely could have got that speed going. Now, it looks like the fuzz is on the way. I believe that's a cop car, so I'm going to stop filming and get out of here. So I'll catch you guys down the road, and I'll hopefully find an igloo. If not, I'll catch you in town. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm looking. I kind of have an idea where they are. It's just a matter of getting to these igloos. It's thick. I mean, it's 95 degrees too, so sorry guys, but I don't think I'm gonna go for off-road hike today just to see the igloos. You know, like I said, I'm 80 miles from my dad's house, so I'm sure I'll come back down here at some point, hopefully in the winter time, and I'm starting to see why most of the investigations I see in this area are done so in the winter. Because it's just so grown up and so thick in here that I just don't think it's possible. So basically, I'm going to, sorry about that. So basically I'm going to head back into town and do some filming in there, show you a couple spots that I think is pretty interesting. And well, we'll go from there. I'm still trying, but unless I see it from the road, I don't think I'm gonna do it. I don't know how legal it is. It is the middle of the day on like I think today's Wednesday, and I just don't feel like talking to a cop about why I'm snooping around or getting ticks or all that other stuff. So if you want to see the igloos, I'll post a picture. Sorry about that. But yeah, let's go into town here, and I'll show you some really cool stuff that doesn't involve parasites and sweating, and I'll see you in there. So that's pretty much going to do it here at Point Pleasant. I tried to show you as much as I could find myself. I'm kind of disappointed I couldn't find the igloos, but they're not really part of the story in my opinion anyway. It's just kind of a creepy add-on, but it's, like I said, it's a great town, great people. There's, you know, they embrace the Mothman spirit here, so I highly recommend, if you're in the area, stop by, hit up the museum here. You know, there's some good food here as well. You know, they embrace their history, and I'm a history guy, so I appreciate that as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.